What's the real reason Edward Snowden has not been pardoned? Is he a traitor or is he a hero? GCHQ and the NSA, the intelligence agencies of America and the UK respectively, are celebrating the 75th anniversary of their collaboration, like as if they're a rap duo or something. 75 years of snitching and skullduggery. We're going to use this to have a look at Snowden and why successive presidents have failed to pardon him and why more and more whistleblowers are getting banged up.
Today, Ed Snowden is still living in Moscow, having left the U.S. following the leak of NSA secrets back in 2013.
Before we get into Snowden and his position and what the lack of pardon from successive, apparently different governments means, let's hear the GCHQ NSA statement. This year, we celebrate the 75th anniversary of the formal partnership between the UK GCHQ and the US National Security Agency. This alliance defines how we share communication, translation, analysis and code-breaking information. That's spying, isn't it? This has helped protect our countries and allies for decades. Oh, thanks. The amazing women and men at our two agencies. Hey, you see you put men and women? Yeah, put women and men. Know what I mean? Get with the times. Women and men at our two agencies use their skills and diversity, say diversity, to make a difference. Our alliance began before World War II. It's like a Jack Daniels commercial. We've been making good old spying since way back before WW2. It was formalised in 1946, built on a history of strong shared values, spying, snooping, sticking a roar in, including respect for privacy and the rule of law. One thing that Edward Snowden made absolutely clear with his revelations is there'd been an incredible respect for privacy and rule of law in the decades of unruly, unwarranted, unrestricted spying that had taken place on ordinary citizens. The modern digital world is constantly evolving. Threats don't respect international borders, and neither do we. For 75 years, this extraordinary partnership has enabled us to evolve and learn from each other. It helps us equip our leaders with the information they need to repress and control you. We celebrate those 75 years and we look forward to the future together. Well, that's how the future works. You're going to have to do that. I suppose you'd be spying on that if you could, wouldn't you?
Ever since Edward Snowden leaked information about the NSA program, the White House has been on defense, calling it a critical tool for tracking terrorists.
Files leaked by Snowden revealed that the NSA funded the GCHQ, that's the UK one, by at least 100 million in 2010 to 2013 alone in order to secure access and influence over the latter's intelligence gathering programs. The UK-USA also serve as the foundation of the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance. Together they operate a global electronic surveillance system intercepting private and commercial communications, citizens and companies in every corner of the globe, known as Echelon. Well, that's not terrifying.
But the report says the program infringes on basic privacy and is wide open to abuse by agencies seeking to spy on Americans for other reasons.
Can you see how this kind of fear starts to temper and control the human experience? On one hand, we've got social media manipulating our consciousness and awareness, turning us into consumers at every opportunity, directing our attention. Also, we've got the pervasive knowledge that we've been spied on and observed. It's a very sort of heightened state of fear. And when you have people in a continued state of fear and disorientation, the natural experience of being human is impeded. Of course, there must be some impediments to the human experience. Otherwise, there are all sorts of violations that might take place on account of the animal aspects of our nature. But I think that we can achieve more with moral codes than we can through a state of fear. Unless, of course, your objective is just to tyrannise and control entire populations so a small elite can operate freely. If the latter is what you're after, then actually you've done quite a good job.
Countries around the world are rushing to use technology to slow the spread of the coronavirus. Some governments are tracking citizens with the help of apps, drones, and other high-tech methods. But critics warn the surveillance may go too far.
Digital rights experts have said extensive surveillance measures introduced around the world during the pandemic have been widened and become entrenched. We knew this would happen, wouldn't it? Oh, we're just doing these surveillance measures because, you know, pandemic and that, we've got to track and trace you in case you're spreading the virus. Entrench it!
Already, U.S. officials are turning to tech companies to tap into people's digital data to see if they're practicing social distancing.
The measures have often been billed as temporary necessities, rushed into place to help track infections, but now governments have been accused of denting civil rights with the widespread use of techniques such as phone monitoring, contact tracing apps, and physical surveillance such as CCTV with facial recognition. Of course, whilst the objectives of observing and tracking infection may appear to be good ones, you're placing it in the hands of people who have not behaved honourably in the past, as Snowden's revelations made clear.
I think the revelations are terrible because they were revealed. There are reasons why we have classified programs.
Yeah. Well, I'm not doubting that there are reasons, it's just that they are nefarious, self-serving reasons.
Yeah, Snowden, I think he's a traitor. I think he's done enormous damage to the country.
Also, already, it's not that long since then people have been out of government. We're pretending it's a new world. It's only like 20 years ago since they were, yes, vilified on a superficial media level, but in fact, we know now that they were behaving in an abominable way, going to war under false pretenses, certainly mobilising opportunities to create chances to strike out, monopolise, control, colonise resources in other countries, of course, obviously the Middle East. Would you imagine that there's been significant change in the kind of motivations of government in the intervening years?
What do you say to Americans, sir, who believe Edward Snowden set in motion something that is proper and just in this country about the scope of surveillance?
Get rid of that lot. Let's get someone new in. Someone that's a better representation of a modern America, also with some charisma.
The fact of the matter is that the United States is a country that abides by rule of law, that cares deeply about privacy.
In September 2020, 7 years after Snowden blew the whistle on the mass surveillance of Americans' telephone records, the US Court of Appeals found the program was unlawful, and the US intelligence leaders who publicly defended it were not telling the truth.
No, I don't think Mr. Snowden was a patriot. If, in fact, he believes that what he did was right, then, like every American citizen, he can come here, appear before the court.
He can come here, attend a show trial, and be imprisoned for the rest of his life.
With a lawyer, and make his case.
What concerns me most about this is the way that successive governments, regardless of the apparent superficial variation of whatever party they happen to represent, because it tends to go back and forth a bit, doesn't it, over the years, they've had the same opinion on the matter of Snowden. In a sense, you can use that to mark the boundary of variation and the boundary of hegemony and homogenisation that is at the core of government. It's unthinkable to have an elected official or a series of elected officials that go, let Snowden go, he was trying his best, we were doing shit we shouldn't have been doing.
The fact is that Mr. Snowden's been charged with 3 felonies.
Nobody ever actually says what he'd done that was wrong. And as far as I know, the WikiLeaks revelations have not led to a single American service death. Whereas the global war on terror has killed more than 7,000 US service members, more than twice the number of people killed in the terrible 9/11 attacks. What Snowden revealed is corruption, dishonesty and deceit. That's what he revealed, and that's why he's exiled.
Now, waste, fraud, and abuse of taxpayer money during a decade of war in Afghanistan and Iraq. After a 3-year investigation, a congressionally mandated commission yesterday issued a blunt finding that between $31 billion and $60 billion has been misspent on the 2 wars. That's up to 1/4 of the entire $206 billion outsourced to private contractors.
A potential other reason is that Edward Snowden's revelations are dangerous and damaging to the business of war. And war is big business in America and in the United Kingdom, and it's a big business around the world. James Risen, author of State of War, says the military-industrial complex, which is how the war machine is described, and the newer homeland security-industrial complex tend to support expansionist American national security and foreign policy since 9/11. They have pushed for a continuation of American military involvement in the Middle East, particularly in Iraq and Afghanistan. War has become profitable. The national security establishment's power stems in part from its ability to suppress the truth about its activities at home and abroad. Thus, it seeks to punish whistleblowers and journalists who try to disclose the truth. The CIA and the NSA frequently apply pressure on the Justice Department and White House to prosecute whistleblowers who disclose their abuses. The reason he's interesting is he's a lens through which you can clearly ascertain the level of government corruption and the consistency of that corruption regardless of fluctuation of administration. That's an important thing to know, because I suppose what can be inferred is that the government is not honest, the government is not your friend. And you won't solve this problem by electing a different government. The institutions themselves and the agencies that remain to a degree in power regardless of what administration takes office will continue to behave in a comparable, if not identical, manner, certain of the same kind of support, regardless of whether it's Trump or Obama. Think of the ink spilt expressing the distinction between those two men, the amount of time on air. I really love this guy. I love this guy. I hate this guy. I hate this guy. When it comes to this issue, the same. When it comes to many important issues, the same. I'm not saying that your particular affiliation for either one of those presidents is not important to you, but I'm saying what should be important to you is the things that they see the same way, because that's real power. That ain't changing. That's beyond discussion. That's beyond the reach of democracy. Democracy ends here.
Well, first of all, he's a terrible guy. I said it right from the beginning. He's a terrible guy who's really set our country back. This guy's a bad guy. You know, spies in the old days used to be executed.
If Trump had pardoned Snowden, that would have been such a sort of mad head rush of, oh, what? You know, but he didn't. So that's the end of that.
Do you want to give Edward Snowden a pardon and bring him back? You once suggested that.
Well, I'm going to look at it. I mean, I'm not that aware of the Snowden situation, but I'm going to start looking at it.
You were going to kill him last week.
Ecuador's president said today he spoke with Vice President Joe Biden, who asked him not to offer asylum to Edward Snowden.
Luckily now, though, it's Joe Biden.
Joe Biden has now ordered his first military strike of his presidency.
Joe Biden's Pentagon transition team hailed from organisations financed by the weapons industry. Of the 23 people who comprised his Department of Defence Agency review team, 8 of them listed their most recent employment as organisations, think tanks or companies that either directly receive money from the weapons industry or are part of the industry. If, right, that was McDonald's, say, it's like, right, of this team of 23 people, 8 of them either worked at McDonald's or companies that needed McDonald's for them to survive. You go, I think this is going to bias people in favour of Ronald McDonald, do you?
When was the last time you had substantive discussions about coming home to the United States, and do you still refer to it as home?
The United States will always be my home.
Well, America will always be my home. You can tell you're dealing with a person with values. What do you think he got out of that? Like, let me get myself over to Russia and I can get myself a nice set of burgundy shirts and dark tank tops and wait out that notoriously enjoyable Siberian winter.
I told the government that all they need to do is give me the right of what we call a public interest defense. This is a fair trial, an open trial, where the jury hears what is happening and they decide, was this justified or not?
It seems to me that this is someone that was acting entirely out of integrity, and the subsequent reaction to him is probably more revealing than the revelations that he made, which was essentially you're being spied on and that information is being used against you. Well, now what we know is whoever you vote for, that person is going to come down hard. He must have touched something at the core of power, Edward Snowden. That's what it is. And what's extraordinary is that though he obviously is a remarkable person, he didn't seem that remarkable. He just seems like a decent guy that's sort of, you wouldn't expect to risk their life and their family's life to tell the truth. And if those are not values that you consider worth celebrating, then I wonder what your values are. Because to say it's, you know, a particular kind of patriotism, well, that means you value your country. But your country is what? A massive land, a flag, a set of ideals, an anthem. It has to stand for something. It has to mean something. And the stories America or the UK tell us about what they are have to mean something. Usually it's stuff along the lines of, this is a good country, we're a country of freedom, we stand up for these morals and rights. Well, how do they intersect with this then? What does it tell us? The catalytic event of Edward Snowden reveals that much of national mythology is a fiction, that nations fundamentally corral populations into a group, control them, manipulate them, use them as a resource, operate at the behest of powerful industries and transnational corporations, use agencies to suppress and control them. Snowden reveals this, and you have to confront, oh shit, yeah, this is what the UK or America or any of these other mad organisations that are involved in celebrating a 75-year anniversary of spying and the manufacture of consent and the manipulation of control. That's what we can learn from the Edward Snowden case.
Unfortunately, then Attorney General Eric Holder responded and said, we can't promise that. We won't promise that. We will promise not to torture you.
Well, come on. They have promised not to torture you.
Unfortunately, I'd say that's not quite enough.
Thanks very much for watching this video. If you like it, then, press like. I do like to see a series of thumbs up. We read all the comments, so put your comment there. We'll join the conversation with you. We'll get involved. Turn on your notification bell if you can stand to. I don't like to push that too hard. You've probably got a lot on your plate. But significantly and importantly, join up to my Alliance, ARC. It's a mailing list. Get information from me directly, just in case this whole thing goes crazy one of these days. If you've enjoyed this, check out my Audible original Revelation, where I go into a lot of these ideas in more detail and talk about the spiritual component to sort of awakening. There's various links, depending on where you are, in the description here. If you can't afford to buy stuff, no problem. Enjoy the free stuff. Enjoy your freedom. But beware that it comes at a terrifying cost and it might not be freedom at all. Cheers.